Think fertility is just about getting pregnant? Think again. Your cycle is one of the clearest reflections of your overall health, and yet most of us were never taught how to read it. In this episode, Dr. Katie Wood, a pharmacist turned holistic fertility practitioner, breaks down how nutrition, stress, toxins, and even trauma impact fertility, and why so many of the myths we've been told just aren't true. If you've ever wondered what your body's really trying to tell you, this is the conversation you don't want to miss. Women's Wellness Authority is your go-to podcast for discovering the hidden gems of holistic health and well-being. In each episode, we dive deep into the many layers of wellness, from mental and physical health to spiritual growth. Through insightful interviews with experts, healers, and thought leaders, we uncover alternative approaches, healing practices, and fresh perspectives that empower you to transform your life. Whether you're seeking innovative ways to heal your body, your mind, or nourish your soul, this podcast offers practical tools and wisdom to help you thrive in all areas of your life. Let's rewrite the rules of wellness together. Step into your power, reclaim your health, and discover what it means to truly thrive from the inside out. Welcome back to Women's Wellness Authority. I'm your host, Diana Ruskowski, and today I'm sitting down with someone who brings both personal experience and professional expertise to a topic that so many women struggle with, and that's fertility. Dr. Katie Wood is a mother, doctor of pharmacy, and a holistic fertility practitioner. With more than a decade of experience in both pharmacy and alternative medicine, she saw firsthand the gaps in women's health, especially when it comes to fertility and pregnancy. After navigating her own challenges, Katie became determined to be the advocate for women, preconception, and maternal health. Today, Katie helps women and couples nourish their mind, body, and spirit so that they can consciously and confidently conceive with ease. She takes a root cause approach, weaving together nutrition, lifestyle, and the mind-body connection to support fertility in a way that feels holistic and hopeful. In this episode, we'll talk about why your menstrual cycle is a vital sign of health, how stress, nutrition, and even environmental toxins impact fertility, and the myths that so many women are told. We'll also talk about the male side of fertility, which often gets overlooked, and then the role of deeper healing in this journey. This is a conversation every woman should hear, whether you're trying to conceive or just want to understand your body better to conceive for the future. Join us for this robust conversation. So, welcome, Dr. Katie.
Hi, Diana. Thank you so much for having me.
So, I always love to hear my guests' stories, and I find it always so interesting that a lot of the practitioners that I'm speaking with end up in their field because of a personal experience. So can you talk about a little bit about that and how you came from traditional pharmacy to become a holistic fertility practitioner?
Sure. Yeah, that is a very common thing. I think a lot of our personal experiences are here for us to really find our true passion and purpose in life. So here I am. And yeah, so I graduated pharmacy school in 2013. So I'd been a pharmacist for about 8 years before I transitioned out of that. And, I was on birth control for a really, really long time. And when my husband and I decided we wanted to start having our family, I went to my OB, as most women do, and just kind of share, like, we're planning on starting a family. Like, what are some best steps that we can take? And she essentially said, we can stop taking the birth control the same month that we start trying. And I was a little nervous about having kids. So I did. I waited until the exact month, stopped it in November of 2017. And that's exactly when we started trying. And I honestly had all expectations that I would be telling my family that I was pregnant by Christmas. So when that did not happen, that was really frustrating. And honestly, luckily for me, my cycle, it was almost like I never even stopped the birth control. Like, it had stayed on the same timeline and regularity pretty much. And so a few months went by. I had my annual appointment, and really went to my OB like, hey, we're not getting pregnant. It's not happening. And of course, since it was only a few months, the advice that she gave me was just keep trying. You're healthy. And really looking back at it and knowing what I know now, the fact that she quote unquote reassured me that I'm healthy, she really had nothing to base that on outside
Mm.
of my cycles were regular. I was a healthy weight, things like that. Like, they never offered to take labs. They never gave me nutrition or lifestyle advice, even tracking my cycle and understanding like my fertile window and things like that. Because coming off of 13 years of birth control use, my ovulation was suppressed for that long. I thought I was getting a period every month, but it's actually just a withdrawal bleed from hormones. And
Oh,
I just,
interesting.
oh, yeah, it's not a real period when you're on birth control. Birth control is prescribed to so many young women these days, and their menstrual cycles are really just establishing themselves at that point. But they're being prescribed birth control because of irregular cycles, painful cycles, PCOS, and it's really just covering things up. It's not making anything better. It's not regulating your cycle. And so I was essentially disconnected from my natural rhythm as a woman. I really didn't understand what the fertile window truly was, how to actually take advantage of my cycle. And so, needless to say, because we'll be getting into all of that, it was very frustrating. I wasn't getting pregnant. I felt broken. I felt like something was wrong with me, like I didn't deserve to be a parent, and I wasn't receiving any help from my provider at that point. And so I had to do, I think having the pharmacy background, I did a lot of research, probably I would say at an unhealthy level, just a lot of rabbit holes. And I had found acupuncture to be a potential support system for fertility. So I did end up working with a wonderful, wonderful acupuncturist. And that was definitely a game changer for me. I think one, just having someone there to listen to you, to offer suggestions. And he really did help find the root cause of what could be going on. And essentially, it was the birth control use. I had blood stagnation. Birth control can diminish the very nutrients that are essential for fertility and pregnancy, like especially B vitamins, magnesium, so many
Mm.
different things. And like I had said, I didn't give my body a break from birth control before starting. So I just kinda hopped right into it, so I didn't even really restore those lost nutrients. It can shrink birth control can shrink your ovaries, it can affect your gut health. There's just so many things that are not talked about, and it affected my body even though I was having, quote, unquote, "regular cycles," it didn't matter. So, working with the acupuncturist, I was able to really help rebalance my body. It still wasn't happening after a couple of months, so I actually switched offices. I started seeing the midwives, thinking that maybe they would be a little bit more holistic and maybe offer some other suggestions, and honestly, it was the same thing. It was, "You're healthy, just keep trying, but if you want, I would schedule your fertility specialist appointment because they typically book up, so get that in the books just in case you don't get pregnant by then." And so that was the advice that they gave me,
Yeah, and
which
I'm sure so many women can relate to exactly what you just said.
absolutely, absolutely. So, a couple months after that, I very unexpectedly had a positive pregnancy test because the month that we conceived, we actually didn't think it could work out because I was in one place, he was in one place, like around my fertile window, but somehow it did, and we were able to conceive naturally. I was able to cancel my fertility specialist appointment. But to kind of go back and answer your full question, why the shift from retail to now being a holistic fertility practitioner? Well, definitely think my fertility journey cracked me open. My pregnancy journey, I just kept diving into the research. How can I have a healthy pregnancy? I switched halfway in my pregnancy to doing a home birth. So I learned a lot. And I was in the conventional healthcare system for about the first half of my pregnancy. And knowing what I know from my own research, we're not educating women and couples to having the healthiest possible pregnancy and outcomes for mom and baby. It's just not being done. So I think that's when I really just had like an internal crisis where in retail pharmacy, I'm only able to do so much. I'm giving
Hmm.
people medications, but a lot of times they're really just band-aids to a situation when I know that we can go deeper. So in 2021, halfway in like August is when I decided I'm going to be a fertility coach. I started my business and here we are. And I've been able to help many, many, many families have babies, have more than one baby, and it's just been such a blessing.
That's amazing. So maybe if we take like tons of steps back and start with it all, which is our menstrual cycle. And I can agree with you more when you share that we're not really educated about what it is. I don't feel like I ever got the proper education and never really fully understood. I just thought, you get your period for that week and then eventually, that's what it serves its purpose because that's you have your period because you need to conceive eventually in the future, but no idea the complexity. And then also you said it's a window into your overall health. So can we dive into that just a little bit?
Yeah. So our entire cycle, menstrual cycle, not just the menstruation phase, is our health report card. It is our fifth vital sign as women. And I mean, I don't know about any of the listeners, but back in the day when I was in school, I feel like all they taught us was you could get pregnant and it will ruin your life and just all the different ways to like prevent pregnancy. We never really learned about, I think, honestly, the beauty of the menstrual cycle and just even like the ebbs and flows of hormones and the different things that can come with that. Like, that's a whole different topic and conversation. But in terms of knowing that you are healthy and are living with like overflowing vitality, it comes down to having a healthy menstrual cycle, whether you're trying to get pregnant or not. So if you are a woman in your reproductive years, so obviously if you're past that, then it's not so important. But if you're a woman in your reproductive years, it's very important. And if something is off, that means that something else is going on in the body, whether it's inflammation, blood sugar dysregulation, hormone imbalance, whatever it may be. But yes, so I have conversations with women in the DMs on Instagram every day. And one of the questions I will ask is if they're tracking their cycle, what their cycle looks like, the quality. And a lot of times people will just tell me, well, I get my period every X days and it lasts for this many days. So I think a lot of us think that that is like the most important piece, which it is important. It tells us a lot, but the true like main piece, like the headliner of it all is ovulation. Ovulation is like
Whether or not you're trying to conceive, right?
correct. Yes. It is the star of the show. Ovulation is impacted by your follicular phase, and the quality of your ovulation and egg quality will determine the quality of your menstruation period as well. So there's four main phases or seasons, some people will call them, in the menstrual cycle. So the first day of your cycle should be considered your first full day of like an actual bleed, an actual flow. You have to use a tampon, a pad, or a menstrual cup. It's not just spotting, like you're actually seeing flow. So that's day one, and that's the menstruation phase. A healthy period would be anywhere from like 3 to 5 days. And ideally, starting like with the heaviest flow for a couple, like 2 to 3 days, and then tapering off from there. Ideally, we're not seeing any spotting before the bleed or after, because those can be signs that your progesterone levels are low. And then you're moving into the follicular phase, which is where the egg is developing. And that is a very key piece. In terms of the quality of your ovulation, it can be impacted from things such as nutrition, lifestyle, stress. If you have a lot, if you're a smoker, if you're around smoking, if you're a drinker, if you're not sleeping really well, all of these things can impact your egg quality. And then it's all leading up to the main event, like the one day in your cycle where you are ovulating. The dominant follicle that has been developing releases an egg. And then that's where the third phase of the cycle comes in, your luteal phase. So the follicle that released the egg, and a lot of people don't know this, actually turns into the corpus luteum, which is responsible for progesterone release. So many women, whether they're trying to get pregnant or not, struggle with adequate progesterone levels. And it's always, how can I improve my progesterone? What can I do? What can I take? But honestly, it all starts like 3 months prior is when the egg development truly starts, but then also in that follicular phase when that egg is like finishing its development process. So that is how you get a more robust progesterone in your luteal phase, is by focusing on egg quality and all of those things. So third phase, luteal phase, this is where we can have some hormone fluctuations. Progesterone ideally is the queen of the hormones. Estrogen should be coming down. Progesterone should be higher than estrogen. And if you conceive, then progesterone will stay elevated. If you don't, then if you have a healthy cycle, ideally what would happen is 12 to 14 days after ovulation, that corpus luteum will start to break down. Your uterine lining will start to break down, and then that's where you will begin a new cycle with menstruation. But where it like ovulation is so important is because if you're not ovulating, which is one of the biggest reasons for fertility issues, it's because something is going on. Are you getting enough nutrients? Are you getting enough fat and protein in your diet? Are you stressed? Are you not eating enough? Are you overexercising? That's honestly, people think that they're being healthy because they're doing HIIT workouts, but really they're putting a lot of stress on their body, and their body is stopping ovulation. If you're not ovulating, or if it's a weaker ovulation, then that's a sign that something is going on. If you are experiencing symptoms during, pre and during your menstruation, like spotting, breast tenderness, let's see, clogging,
Cramping.
cramping, headaches, really heavy bleeds, that's a sign of a hormonal imbalance going
And
on.
what about if you're like really irritated? So those are all signs that something else is going on in your body.
Yeah, so progesterone is called like the calm and carry on hormone. So ideally, like I had said, progesterone is higher than estrogen. So that should help kind of bring us in a pretty chill state. But a lot of times our estrogen is higher than progesterone. And that's where we can feel things like that irritation and whatnot, because,
And that's like the estrogen dominance, which we'll talk about too, right?
right.
Yeah. Okay.
And that can be,
I have a couple questions.
yeah.
And this might be more of a myth, but just because you're talking about the actual health of an egg, I always was under the impression you're born with the amount of eggs that you're going to have.
Mhm.
So you can have full control of the health of the eggs. So do you have a set amount? Is that accurate?
Yes, you are born with the amount of eggs that you will have in your lifetime. But I think what a lot of people don't realize, because either their doctor tells them they can't or doesn't share with them at all, you do have control in terms of improving the quality of your eggs. Yes,
And that's where nutrition comes into play and
exactly.
all of that. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I think that was my biggest question, because I always hear like I'm running out of eggs, but it's probably like it's that, but also it's the quality of what you have left. So would you
Yeah.
rather have 20 really crappy,
Mhm.
unhealthy eggs, or would you rather have 6 really strong, vibrant, healthy eggs that are going to end
Yeah.
up maybe turning into a
Mhm.
baby.
And as we age, the quality of our eggs can decline, but I think when you're really, really intentional and you have targeted information for you as an individual, you can up the ante on that. You can improve the quality of the eggs that you do have left because it just takes one. Just takes one.
So we in our prep call we had talked about something you called the fertility awareness method. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
What that means in like simple terms?
so essentially it is a natural way to either prevent pregnancy or try to get pregnant. It's tracking your cycle to know and determine when you are most fertile. So, if you are trying to avoid pregnancy, obviously that's when you either want to abstain or use some sort of barrier method that works for you. If you are trying to conceive, then that is when you want to be having sex within that fertile window to optimize your chances of conceiving that cycle. So, one of the things, definitely tracking like when was the first day of your period. There's so many different apps these days that you can use. You can write it down. I don't recommend just relying on an app because it's basically going to give you an estimation of when you're ovulating. So that's not reliable. You need to really be looking at your natural signs. So also looking for cervical mucus. So this ideally should be happening within the days leading up to ovulation. So fertile cervical mucus, sometimes an example given is like egg whites. It can be clear, it can be stretchy, and it's just a really nice vehicle to help bring the sperm where it needs to go. Also, helps create a hospitable environment for the sperm to survive as well. So if you're wanting to get pregnant, that's, basically when you want to be having sex with your partner. If you don't want to be getting pregnant, then again, either abstaining or using a barrier method. But that's a sign that you want to be seeing because that means that your hormones are in line with what you would expect for a healthy cycle. Now, it doesn't mean that you ovulated. It doesn't confirm ovulation. It just lets you know that ovulation is near. And some other things that you can do is actually track your basal body temperature. So, this is your temperature first thing in the morning before you even get out of bed. Look at your phone, take a sip of water. There's a few different devices you can use these days. Essentially, like the old fashioned way of doing it is putting a thermometer under your tongue and taking your temp that way. And ideally, what we will see is in the follicular phase, your temps are pretty steady, maybe in the 97-degree area. And then once ovulation happens, we would expect to see a zero point 0.5 to 1 degree shift in temperature because progesterone is a warming hormone. So that's where that temperature shift is coming. So that would then confirm I ovulated. Once you see that temperature
That's such a small so you have to have a legitimately good thermometer because if I even think about you this is not gonna work because sometimes I get a range of temperature changes, so
Mhm.
you really want something that's
You want a thermometer that goes to the 100ths place. I know that. One device that I recommend for my clients is called Temp Drop. It actually goes around the arm. You put it on before you go to bed. It takes away the need to take your temperature first thing in the morning around the same time every morning because it tracks your temp throughout the night and then it just gives you like a weighted
a
average for
reading.
your, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yes, you definitely need a thermometer that can give you an accurate temperature for sure. But you would expect to see that temperature shift. There are also other ways you could check, like the position of your cervix. This is definitely a much less popular tracking method, but because you have to basically go in and internally and see what the position of your cervix is. But that is another way to track your fertile window and once ovulation has occurred. But yeah, once I had my daughter in 2019, I never went back on birth control. And the fertility awareness method is what my husband and I practice. He honestly knows my cycle just as good, if not better than me. So get your partner involved. I think it's important for them to know, especially if you're on a fertility journey. I mean, if you're just trying to prevent pregnancy, then you could probably do it yourself. But yeah, so that's the fertility.
Well, it takes two to tango, so
Exactly.
the second member should participate, right?
Mm-hmm.
You also mentioned something about period quality. Can you talk about that? You talked about the flow, but what also about the color and the
Yeah.
consistency? And that is an indication of
Mm-hmm.
things as well, right?
So I have seen all different spectrums. I have seen women have periods where they only bleed for like 2 days, which is too short. There's something going on with the uterine lining. It didn't thicken enough. Or then alternatively, there's sometimes people who are bleeding for 7 to 9 days. That's a really long time. That could be a sign that maybe you have a little bit too much estrogen going on. I mean, we can't say for sure without testing, but something is going on with the hormones. So ideally, between 3 and 7 days, with like 5 days being the sweet spot. 3 is still even a little bit on the shorter side. And like I had said earlier, you can expect the majority of your blood flow in the first 2 to 3 days, and then that should taper off. And about 80 mLs is about the like average healthy blood loss that you could expect to see throughout your entire menstrual cycle, with the majority of that being lost in that first 2 to 3 days. And we want, like a cranberry red color. Sometimes it can be a bit of like a darker red color. Ideally, there's no clots going on in there. Ideally, we're not seeing any spotting. So sometimes people will have brown spotting before they actually start bleeding. And that's not a good sign. That could mean that progesterone is too low. It wasn't able to do its job in the luteal phase. And yeah, so that's pretty much what we would look for.
Very interesting. Okay, so you talked a little bit about the role of nutrition and lifestyle in fertility. And I think this is something, I think generally speaking, practitioners are not educated around nutrition and the impact that it
Mhm.
has on health. And so, can we talk a little bit about how these are pieces in the puzzle as well? So, from your perspective, why is food so foundational?
Sure. Well, first of all, our hormones have a cholesterol backbone. Like they need fat and cholesterol to be able to be properly produced in the body. So if we're not getting enough of that in our diet, and a lot of times people think that they're eating healthy because they're eating low fat dairy or whatever it may be, but because, you know, back in the 90s was the whole low fat fad where fat was just
Hmm.
demonized. So many of us who are really in that reproductive or wanting to have children phase grew up with that, to really have fear around fat. But fat is fundamental in terms of hormone production. And then I think as a whole, we're just not getting enough macros in our diet as women, especially breakfast. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Your grandma was not lying to you. She was spot on. And if you think about our grandmothers and like they had so many children back in the day. They were not struggling with fertility the way that we are now. And so I would say getting enough protein in your diet. Protein is also a very important building block, especially for creating and building a baby from your own body. Like you have to make sure that you're getting enough raw material to be able to do that. So, what I see a lot of times with people who share these things with me on Instagram or even in my clients, they're not eating breakfast in a timely manner, or they're not eating breakfast at all, or the breakfast that they are eating is so skimpy, you would think it was like a toddler's breakfast or something like that. And honestly, and we'll go over like the biggest changes, these changes have gotten my clients pregnant within a matter of 2 to 3 months. I've seen it so many times. It's wild. It is wild. So that it just shows and proves to me how foundational and important nutrition is. So, first of all, we're grown women. We want to be making sure that we're getting enough nutrition and calories in our diet. So, food is safety. It allows our body to feel safe. It lets us know that yes, whether you're trying to whether you're trying to get pregnant or not, that we could sustain building life outside of our own survival. Because if we're not getting enough, our reproduction goes on the back burner. It's not a top priority. Our survival is a top priority. So if we're not eating enough, then forget about it, especially
Yeah,
if,
we talked about that with stress too, right? Which I think
yeah,
is it just all these conversations always just remind me how amazing the body is. Because if you are under like a constant state of stress, to your point, if you don't have the right nutrition, your body is going to be like in survival mode
yeah,
and it's not going to prioritize fertility because it's like, I'm just trying to survive because it thinks like you're being attacked or something because
hmm
um,
exactly.
you're
Yeah,
in that constant state of stress.
yeah. So getting enough calorie, it's not a one size fits all. Like around 1,800 to 2,000 calories is like an estimated baseline, but it depends on your activity level. It depends on, I'm a very petite woman. I'm 5 foot. I don't have to eat as much necessarily as someone who's like 5'5" and exercises 5 days a week because I don't do that. Right. So, like,
Mhm.
it's very unique to the person, but I would say as an estimated baseline, 1,800 to 2,000 calories. I don't count calories. I think it's
Oh, it's
enough.
just making sure you have the right macros, right? To
Yeah.
your point, the right proportion and ratio of
Mhm.
fats and proteins and
Yeah. So ideally, what I recommend for my clients is we want to be eating breakfast within 1 hour of waking up. And you want to be having breakfast before you have any sort of caffeine. Because I see so many women skipping breakfast, doing a workout, and then drinking coffee before even eating. And if you really kind of break that down and think about it, exercise, yes, it's healthy. Yes, it's needed to keep our bodies healthy and strong, but depending on the exercise, it's a stressor on the body. And then if you're drinking coffee without any sustenance, like that's spiking your cortisol, which when your cortisol spikes, your blood sugar spikes. All of these things are no bueno for optimal hormone production. So, eating within 1 hour of waking, we really want to prioritize protein and fat in the morning because I see so many women who are having very carb heavy breakfast. And it's not that you shouldn't have carbs or that carbs are the enemy. But what can happen is if you're not getting enough protein and enough fat, that's when you're getting that blood sugar crash in an hour or two. And then you start reaching for things that probably aren't healthy for you. Or if you're at work, it's probably hard to have something of real sustenance. So, like, you don't feel good because your blood sugar is taking you on a roller coaster ride. So, when you have a breakfast with sufficient protein, sufficient fat, yes, also some carbs, like I'm saying, some of my breakfast will look like my husband bakes sourdough at home. So homemade sourdough bread, slab on that grass-fed butter, put on that avocado on there, and an egg, right? And so you're getting your carbs, you're getting your protein, you're getting your fat, obviously a little bit more because I like my ladies to aim for about 30 grams of protein in the morning. Again, that can be variable in terms of your size. It's about zero point 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per ideal body weight. So it's really dependent upon your size, but 20 to 30 grams in the morning. And I also hear this a lot that I'm just not hungry for breakfast. If you're not hungry for breakfast in the morning, that is a metabolism issue. It's
Mhm.
not like a badge of honor to wear. It's not, that's just how my body is. That is a sign that your metabolism is sluggish if you are not hungry in the morning or you're eating way too late the night before. So,
Which is probably screwing up your metabolism too, because, right,
yes.
that's, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, aiming for about 30 grams of protein with each meal, making sure that you're getting fat with each meal, and of course, healthy, complex, whole food carbs, avoiding processed foods, avoiding added sugars. I always tell my clients to pair their carbs with a protein or fat because that is going to help regulate your blood sugar. So, if you're having an apple is healthy, right? Don't eat it by itself. You don't want to have naked carbs. You want to put clothes on the carbs. So a lot of times I'll have an apple with peanut butter and I'll just
I
sprinkle
love that.
cinnamon on
Put clothes on the carbs.
it. Yeah. And that will help regulate and maintain your blood sugar, which
Interesting.
is so important. Blood sugar regulate, like my husband and I did a little stint of keto. This was before we started trying to have our first, and I don't do keto anymore, but it was so life-changing for me because I realized I just was not getting enough protein and fat. Once I started doing that, I was not getting those blood sugar crashes, like and I remember if we ever left the house, I'd have to bring a snack because I would get a blood sugar crash, and it would be like, if I don't get something to eat right now, I'm gonna gnaw my own arm off, and that is a sign that you're having blood sugar issues. So, I'm not
It
promoting.
was a big contributor to my health, when I was trying to dig in a couple months ago, and my cortisol levels were, like, all over the place, and then therefore the impact to my blood sugar, and she had concerns that I was pre-diabetic, which were really scary to me, and it was because of that. And so
Yeah.
once I regulated and ate a little bit differently and then I was able to regulate my cortisol too.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, cortisol and blood sugar, they're just so tightly knit together, and if one is impacted, then the other is gonna be impacted as well. So, yeah, I learned a lot doing that. I would still consider myself very much lower carb compared to the standard American diet, but in a intentional way.
Yeah. Now
Mhm.
what about stress and sleep and environmental toxins too is a big one.
Yeah, so let's go with sleep first. So, sleep is funny to me because honestly, these foundations, if people actually listened to it and took the time to implement it in their life, they could save so much money on fertility treatments or any other health issue costs as well. But sleep is one of them. That is something that doesn't cost you any money. It is something that is free. You just have to be able to shift your habits, create healthier habits. But ideally, especially as women, we're going to bed between 9 and 10 p.m. Our brain does a big detox in the earlier stages of our sleep, and when we're going to bed super late, like after 11, midnight, or even later than that, we're missing out on this crucial detox phase and process. And we're just not getting the same restful, restorative sleep that we could had we gone to bed around 9 or 10 p.m. Ideally, we're really settling down when the sun starts going down, but obviously that's a little hard, especially for people in the northern hemisphere like myself. Like, I'm like just like 2 months here, it's going to be dark at like 4 or 5 o'clock. So,
Yeah.
it's really just supporting your circadian rhythm, and sometimes it does shift seasonally. Like, I'm gonna be ready for bed probably at 7 o'clock in the winter, whereas, like, in the summer, maybe it's more like 8 or 9 o'clock. But going to bed early enough, staying off your screens, so your phone, TV, your computer, at least an hour before bed. Because when we're exposed to that blue light, it's going to shut down our natural melatonin production and release, and it's going to spike cortisol. It basically tricks the brain into thinking like it's daytime when it's not. So if you have trouble falling asleep, this could be a huge contributor. I do really say, like, if this is a non-negotiable, like, nighttime is your TV time with your husband, which I can totally relate to, wear blue light blocking glasses, right? At least do something. Maybe turn it off 15 minutes before bed, 30 minutes before bed, and then have some sort of routine, like, a hot tea or journal or reading or whatever, fills your cup up and feels good to you. And then getting minimally 7 hours of sleep, if not 8. Some people may do better with 9 hours of sleep. That might be a little bit too much for others, but I would say 7 to 8 hours of sleep, ideally in a dark room, a cooler room. That's really going to help with the most restorative sleep possible. And then when you're waking up, you want to open your blinds. You actually want to get outside and expose your eyes to the natural light. So no glasses, no contacts, no sunglasses, that's for sure. And that is going to signal to your body that 14 hours from now, give or take, it's going to be time to go to bed. And it's going
So
to,
interesting.
yeah. And your circadian rhythm impacts all of these downstream hormones that include your reproductive hormones, your hormones involved in your menstrual cycle. And I have a mentor, a fertility mentor. She did a TED Talk recently, and she talked about sleep and the importance of sleep, and that if you just fix this one thing, that
Imagine.
your
It could be
fertility
that easy.
could drastically
Wow.
change, drastically change. So I just had a initial call with one of my newer clients, and she's going to bed between 11 and 12 every night. And I'm like, we gotta fix that. So it's it's always interesting to me when I talk to people or new clients or even just anyone, on social media. They've been trying and struggling to get pregnant for years and years and years. Maybe they've spent 5 to 10 to $30,000 on treatments. And then we talk about their nutrition and their lifestyle habits. And I'm like, well, we could improve your sleep. We can improve your nutrition. This supplement would be way better than what you're taking. And I bet you'll probably get pregnant in like 2 or 3 months. Like, it's the simplest things. It
Yeah,
really
but
is.
that's the craziest to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
And can you talk a little bit about environmental
Oh, yes.
toxins, what
Yeah.
that means?
And I wanna talk about stress too.
Yeah.
So many of us are just ping-ponging to the next thing, and I'm guilty of doing that in the past as well. Just overfilling our calendars, overgiving, not filling up our own cup, just killing ourselves really by just doing all of these things, whether it's for work, family, your social life. Maybe you have family members that depend on you, whether it's like a parent or a grandparent or something like that. But we are overextending ourselves. And there's two ways that this plays out, I think. Physically, we're putting our bodies under stress. And when our cortisol levels are maxed out, it can impact our progesterone levels. It can impact our hormones. And I also think on an energetic level, if you are trying to get pregnant, but your schedule is so jam packed, how are you going to have space for a baby? Like, really? So even thinking about that, like, if you are so busy that almost unconceivable how you could fit a child into there and you're struggling to get pregnant, that's probably one of the places that I would start. You really need to start scaling back. You need to learn to start saying no. And also maybe this is a little bit of self-awareness that you have to work on, figuring out what actually feels good for you to say yes to. Because maybe you don't even realize you say yes to everything and you don't even realize, well, actually that doesn't feel good anymore. So respecting your boundaries and all those things. Yeah, stress is a huge, huge piece. Or if you are micromanaging your fertility journey or just like doing all this research and driving yourself crazy or mad with
It's
trying
so
to
stressful.
fix this or fix, and that was me. I mean, I'm type A, and so many women are. It's like you're just driving yourself mad and driving yourself crazy. And that's where becoming more embodied and in tune with your intuition as a woman is really, really important. I think for anyone, for any woman in any phase of life, but especially on the fertility journey. And then endocrine disruptors. I mean, gosh, we are just exposed to so many things in some of it we don't have control over. Some of it we do. So I
And
say,
these are the environmental toxins we talked about, right? Can you maybe just define what an endocrine disruptor is for those that are maybe not familiar with what you're talking about?
sure. So an endocrine disruptor is something that comes from something outside of our body. So let's just say plastic, for example, plastic water bottles contain like what is in the plastic, and then you drink the water, and if you're drinking any of the chemicals that were in the plastic, the body can recognize some of that as they think it's estrogen, but it's actually not. So it's an endocrine disruptor because it's going into your body and it's actually impacting your hormones and your cells. So plastics is one of them. Pesticides can be another one. Your laundry detergent can be another one. If you have
Cosmetics,
cosmetics is huge.
perfume is a huge
Oh,
one.
yeah. Artificial fragrances. Mhm.
Yeah, you basically just want to avoid the F word, fragrance, that's in
Yeah.
anything, because that's like the catch-all for a lot of chemicals, and a lot of those chemicals are endocrine, like, clones, essentially. So they trick
Mhm.
your body and think, right, that it's the estrogen, and then your body gets all out of whack, and estrogen becomes dominant in your body
Mhm.
because, I mean, think about, especially for young girls and women, how many things we put on our bodies first thing in the morning
Oh, sure.
compared to a male, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and we wonder why younger girls are having painful or irregular cycles because of what they're being exposed to. And hey, I used to be a Bath and Body Works girl myself.
Same. We grew up in that era,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just like,
Cucumber mint, cool
oh
whatever
yeah,
that was called. Yeah.
cucumber melon. Like you just
Yeah.
add that on with like 13 years of birth control, not eating the best in college. Like it's just a
Yeah.
hot mess. It's a hot
Yeah.
mess. But I like to say focus on the things you can control and also the things that will have the biggest impact. So things that you're using every single day. So I always say laundry detergent because that's
Mm.
going on your clothes, your sheets, your towels, whatever you're using is being emitted into the air. So you can go to ewg.org and they rate different detergents. So some will have like an A rating, which is good. Some will have like a D or an F rating. You want to avoid those.
Yeah, stay away from those.
Yeah. Honestly, anything under B, I pretty much try to avoid, you know, getting rid of dryer sheets. You can use wool dryer balls instead of that. What you're cooking in, what you're storing your food in, those are really, really big things. So a super easy swap, and it's really not that pricey. Get rid of your plastic Tupperware and replace it with glass Tupperware. You can get like a nice bundle for like $30 on
Yeah.
Amazon.
Mhm.
Not too bad. Swapping out your cookware, like anything that's coated with Teflon or like any non-stick coating, that contains something called PFAS, and they're like forever chemicals, like almost impossible to eliminate from the body. So trying to get cast iron, stainless steel, a high quality ceramic option, glass, and things like that, what you're washing your body in, lotion. Our skin is our biggest organ. It absorbs anything that you put on it. There's a lot. There's a lot that
And it's
goes.
overwhelming, right? So I think the point here is that there are things that you can control, like the sleep stuff, your
Yep.
food, your stress, create those boundaries, and then be
Mhm.
aware of what you're putting on your body and just start small. So if it's just laundry, you can do just
Exactly.
laundry. You don't have to attack and replace everything in your house. You can.
Mhm.
I actually have a guest in a couple weeks that's going to be talking about living a low tox lifestyle and kind of
Yeah.
going through, because it
It
can be really overwhelming. And it took me years, to quite
Mhm.
honestly, to fully like detox and get rid
Oh,
of
sure.
everything.
Yeah, I've been doing it since 2016, and there's still
Yeah, so
things
many
that
things.
you learn. Like, I think it was a couple years ago, I realized, like, oh, our air fryer, like, oh my gosh, that has
Oh, I
nonstick on
know.
it too. Like, oh, we gotta replace that. There's just things that you don't even think
I
about.
thought that the other day. I cook my kids chicken nuggets in it all the time, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oof, I gotta check what this is made out of. It's probably not good."
So then we switched to a stainless steel one. But giving yourself grace and compassion, like
Yeah.
we were using that even well after I am just aware of all these things. And I'm like, oh, I never even thought about that. You just, you just do your
So
best.
I mentioned the male and their role in fertility, and you shared a really, what to me was an astounding stat on male fertility. And that could be a huge factor too. So can you just touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah. So male factor infertility plays about a 50% role in infertility cases, and that number has gone up pretty much. So I think that's why it sounds so surprising because it didn't always used to be so high. And the trouble with that is a lot of times we just are so hyper focused on the woman, and couples will be trying for 6 months to a year or sometimes even more before they even have the male partner tested, like their semen analysis. And he could be the full reason why you're struggling. He could be part of the equation of why you're struggling. But male fertility plays a huge role in the conception process, but also in the health of the pregnancy, in the level of miscarriage risk. So it's not something to dismiss. The quality of the sperm plays a very, very large role in basically the health and potential of you having a healthy, viable pregnancy, full term pregnancy. They even say that the health of the sperm may even play a role in morning sickness or not as well. So there's just a lot of things that I
Oh,
think that
wow.
they're learning. And
And do some of the things that you talked about, so diet and the chemicals, that can also be true for the male, correct?
yes.
Stress,
Hmm.
because that all impacts the quality of the sperm.
Absolutely. And I think making sure that they're eating well. I'd say some of the more common things I've seen on the male side are they're either not taking any sort of fertility focused prenatal at all, or they're not taking like a very comprehensive one. So getting them on a really nice men's prenatal with a fertility focus and making sure that they're getting their vegetables in. I actually had a new client that I spoke with the other week, and he wasn't eating any vegetables in his diet, avoiding processed foods, regulating their blood sugar. All of those are going to play a role in the quality of the sperm, getting enough sleep. But I had two recent clients, two different clients. One of them was using a hot tub every week, and one of them was using the sauna a few times a week. And heat can impact. I actually just released a podcast episode on this yesterday or today. Heat can impact sperm, and sperm takes about 72 days to regenerate. So they were essentially, like, killing their sperm, and they didn't know. They didn't realize, so avoiding things like that when you're actively trying to conceive, not putting your phone in your pocket, not putting your laptop on your lap, even not using, like, seat heaters, like, if your seats heat up in your car and things like that. Wearing boxers is going to offer more circulation than briefs. In my research, it even says, like, if you can go to bed in the nude, that's even better for for
I
them.
mean, going to bed in the nude is free, so do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Not smoking is a big one, and this includes cannabis. I think sometimes people will have a misconception that since cannabis is more natural, that it doesn't have the same impacts as, like, nicotine. But smoking either way is going to add a lot of oxidative stress on your cells in your body. So, no smoking, ideally, no drinking alcohol, or at least minimizing it. Beer is very estrogenic. So, if you're a beer drinker, you might want to reduce that because that can impact your testosterone, which can impact your sperm.
Hmm. There's so many things.
And I hate to say this, don't kill the messenger, but if your partner is not willing to make these changes so you can have a family, if that's your goal, or maybe just try to think about what parenting would be like. It is very much a partnership in terms of raising a child. So, because I've had that happen where partners are not willing to even
Well,
take a supplement or even get a semen analysis. So, yeah, I have seen that happen. So get your
Yeah.
partner involved, have that open line of communication with them, and yeah, I think that you'll see a huge difference in your journey.
So I have a question. So say that I was trying to conceive and I've done all of these things. Like, at what point do I then seek a fertility special, like, go consider IVF? Or we talked a little bit about genetic testing and, getting labs so you see where your numbers are at. At what point when you're working with your clients,
Mhm.
do you stay right up front? Like, you recognize, so say I'm going to bed at 1 in the morning and I'm not eating anything at breakfast. Do you have them fix those things first and then you wait a couple months and then if nothing's happening, get labs? Or do you do labs like right off the bat just to see and get sort of, okay, here's what the health of the sperm and here is the health of the mothers?
Mhm. So a lot of the people that I work with, they've been trying for a long time. So what we do is we do the labs right away, but it does take time to do that.
Yeah.
So we're laying the fertility foundations down while they're completing the labs, while we're waiting for the results to come in. I think for someone who is completely brand new, it kind of depends on age a little bit, and it kind of depends on what are things that you already know that you have. If you know you have PCOS, if you know you have endometriosis, I would just dive into the labs right now, and
Yeah.
not fertility treatment. To be In my personal opinion, I would take this more natural root cause approach first, because very likely you will be able to go on and get pregnant naturally, and that will also just help your chances of conceiving more in the future if you want more than one child. I think that IVF should really be like a last resort,
Okay.
or if you're someone who needs it because of a anatomical or genetic issue, either on the male or female side. So if you're relatively young, I'd say maybe you could try for about 6 months or so. If it's not happening, reach out to someone like myself that can really help you, at least even give you some foundations to work on. Even if you don't necessarily jump into the labs right away, a lot of times these fertility foundations are enough to really move the needle for you. If you're over 35 or even 40, where timing, and I would say more for over 40 than 35, where timing is a little bit more of the essence, then I would say let's just kind of dive in, look at what you have going on for yourself, and getting the labs
Hmm.
done,
Okay.
pretty much.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Can we talk about some of the common misconceptions and myths? You just mentioned PCOS and
Endometriosis.
yes, and that I know that was one that you mentioned,
Mhm.
that there's a misconception if you have those that you can't get pregnant.
Yeah, I think a lot of women, when they get that diagnosis in the doctor's office, they're immediately told, you're going to need fertility treatment to get pregnant. And that's just not true. If your body has these things going on, it's because there's something underlying happening. Whether it's blood sugar regulation, that's a big thing that happens with PCOS. With endometriosis, a lot of times it's an excess of estrogen. So is it as simple as looking at your like environmental toxins, your endocrine disruptors, making sure that your digestion is working as it should be, because the quality of our bowel movements actually plays a very large role in terms of estrogen elimination. So,
Yeah, this was so interesting when you shared that. Can you just explain that a little bit?
so estrogen goes through three different phases of metabolism. And the last piece is basically pooping it out. And some women can have an enzyme in their gut that's elevated that's called beta glucuronidase. And it can actually, like our body does, our liver and everything, packages estrogen up to be eliminated from the body. This beta glucuronidase acts like a pair of scissors, so to say, and it basically like cuts the ribbon off reactivates the estrogen, and then it can be reabsorbed back
Hmm.
into the body. And it's just this vicious cycle. So, one, if you're not having at least minimally one daily bowel movement, then that could be a big issue. And then there in the phase 2 and phase 1 metabolism of estrogen, we can have if you have methylation issues, that can impact the metabolism of estrogen. There's just a whole, and this is where the Dutch test comes in. I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with the Dutch test, but it's a at home like urine hormone test, and it gives me a really nice insider's view of what's going on with your hormone metabolism. But yeah, so if you have endometriosis, like a Dutch test is an absolute must and something that we're going to work on. So needless to say, if you have PCOS or endo, like it's not so black and white that you cannot get pregnant, that you can't reverse it, that you have to live with it for the rest of your life, and that you need fertility treatment. If you're willing and motivated to look into what's going on and to implement what might be necessary to reverse it, you can absolutely do it. And
Yeah,
then,
so there's hope, which is,
yes,
which is great.
I have had a a good handful of PCOS clients who, one of them in particular, struggled for 9 years, never ever got a positive pregnancy test. We worked on her diet, her blood sugar regulation. She was pregnant in 3 months, and she actually recently just had her second child
Oh,
as well.
isn't
So,
that like that's what it's all about,
mhm,
being
yeah.
able to help these families bring life into the world. What other common misconceptions do you see?
I think another really big one I see is low AMH. A lot of women, and even in their 30s, so they're being told that they have POI, which is premature ovarian insufficiency, and that's because their numbers essentially look like they're
Numbers of what? Sorry, what's
uh,
AMH?
anti-Müllerian hormone, and then there's other things that we can look at too, like follicle stimulating hormone, estrogen levels. So the AMH and the estrogen can be low and the FSH can be high. It basically looks like you're in menopause, but you're 30
Not.
and you shouldn't
Yeah.
be. So, and then even women in their 40s, they're told, I have low AMH. I'm not going to be able to get pregnant. And that's just not, I mean, it depends on the number, but it's not necessarily true. And doing a lot of these things that we've talked about, you can improve your AMH. It's not a number that just goes down, like, it fluctuates even day to day, cycle to cycle, and it has been able to very much be improved with lifestyle, nutrition, stress, sleep changes. So if you were told you have low I was told I had low AMH actually in my 20s, and I was able to conceive both of my children naturally. So that I was like maybe 23 when they told me that, and I conceived my daughter at 29, and I'm now pregnant, and I conceived pretty much just a couple months before I was turning 36. So it's definitely possible.
Congratulations.
Thank you. A few others are basically that when we turn 35, our fertility just dives off of a cliff, which isn't true. I mean,
The
yes.
ticking clock, right? That
Oh,
I feel like all women are told.
sure. I have like 32-year-old women freaking out because they're like, I don't have any time because they feel like they're so close to 35. But that's just not true. If you're living a healthy lifestyle, if you're laying down these fertility foundations, then it's not the truth that it's gonna just be so hard and difficult for you to get pregnant. And then I think one that I would love to really clarify, because this was something that I didn't quite understand on my own, and I see it quite commonly, using LH strips or ovulation predictor kits. So it basically is testing for the LH surge, which when we get an LH surge, it's what basically tells the ovaries to release the egg. A lot of women think that if they get a positive OPK or LH strip, that that means that they ovulated, but it doesn't. All it means is that you got the LH surge. It doesn't mean that your body actually released an egg, and it doesn't tell you anything about the quality of that ovulation either. So I remember I used to think, "Oh, I got the positive OPK, I ovulated," but no, that's not true. So that's where The fertility awareness method can be helpful because you can confirm ovulation with BBT. There's even at-home hormone trackers you can use these days that will show you an increase in PDG, which is a metabolite of progesterone, and that will confirm that you ovulated. So that's definitely another one. I just don't want women thinking that, oh, I'm good. I'm ovulating on this day every month, because unfortunately, that it doesn't guarantee that you did.
Yeah, it goes back to what you were talking about with the birth control, is that
Mhm.
you're getting a period, but you're actually really not,
Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
Or the qualities is not there. All right, so we've talked about all of the physical sides of fertility, but I know your approach also looks beyond the physical, which isn't, I think, something that many people probably think about,
Mhm.
especially in traditional care. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So honestly, a lot of our physical symptoms that have manifested, so for example, PCOS, endometriosis, even painful periods, it's all stemming from our energetic body. We are all energy beings. And when we have things like that happening, it's basically our body's way of communicating with us that something is going on underneath. There has been some sort of trauma that hasn't been resolved. And what can happen is we can experience trauma, and there's a lot of kind of like misunderstanding of trauma. Like a lot of people tend to think it has to be this big, big trauma, like sexual trauma, physical abuse, things like that. That was kind of my interpretation when I first started really being introduced to a lot of this, but it doesn't. It could be as simple as your parent was late one day picking you up from school and you felt abandoned. It can be as simple as that. And if you weren't raised with the right tools to process these emotions, which many of us were not because our parents weren't raised in that way. A lot of time, right, don't cry.
You're fine.
Yeah, it's fine. You're fine for, whatever. We don't process these either little or big events, whatever they may be. And it can get stored, and it gets stored in our organs, in our body. And what can happen is it can impact the flow of energy in our body. So doing energetic work with my clients is definitely a big piece of the puzzle, because we're all carrying trauma, whether it's our own, whether it's ancestral from our lineage. So this might blow your mind or some of the listeners' minds. When your grandmother was pregnant with your mother at around 4 months gestation, your mother had all of the eggs already in her body in the
Yeah,
womb.
I've
So
heard this
like
before. That is
you
crazy.
you were inside your grandmother at one point for about 5 months. So if you think about what our grandparents have experienced, or even their grandparents, any war, any famines, any physical abuse, any sexual abuse on their end, that is all stored energetically, and that can be passed down. So this is kind of where epigenetics can come in play as well. Like we have these blueprints in our cells, and our environment can either turn the expression on or off, pretty much.
I feel like we could dig into this for a solid
Oh,
hour. This is
oh,
so,
yes.
so, so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, it there could be a lot that has just been unresolved for you that could be blocking your
Yeah.
fertility. You could be doing everything else right, and then this is really just the main piece for you to really look at.
Yeah, and such a different and interesting approach, right? So you work not only with the physical body, but then you're also working with them on an energetic level to help clear
Mhm.
some of that so that that isn't a hurdle in their life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Such amazing work, Dr. Katie.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So for the listeners, they might be loving all the things you're saying. It's maybe setting off some light bulbs. Hopefully they're writing down some notes. What is the best way that they can get in touch with you?
Sure. I'm super active on Instagram, so you can find me on there at the underscore wellness underscore pharmacist. And then I go into really all of this on my podcast as well. So the Finally Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I was thinking before I hopped on, really kind of because I feel like the menstrual cycle was a big piece of our conversation today. I do have one episode I'd recommend you start with if it's something that interests you is episode number 131. So, the number one mistake women are making when tracking their fertile window. And yes, this matters whether you're trying to get pregnant or not, but that's where I'd recommend starting. But yeah,
Episode 131.
131. Yeah.
I'll put a link to that episode too in our resources.
Sure.
So that would be great.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Katie, so much for sharing your story and your wisdom today. I know so many women will walk away from this conversation feeling not only more informed, but also more hopeful about what's possible on their fertility journey. To those of you tuning in, I hope you feel reminded that your body is wise, it's resilient, and always giving you clues about your health. Fertility is not just about conceiving, it's about wholeness, balance, and healing at every level. Listeners, thank you for joining me on Women's Wellness Authority. If today's conversation spoke to you, share it with a friend and be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube so you never miss what's next. And if you're enjoying the show, a 5-star review means the world to me and helps more women find us. So until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and most of all, stay well. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Women's Wellness Authority. If today's conversation inspired you, shifted your perspective, or sparked something within you, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who might need it the most. Have a story of your own or something you'd like to share? I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Women's Wellness Authority. Please note the content shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider regarding your health and wellness decisions. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and most of all, stay well. Thanks, everyone.